Guess I'd like to open this meeting for the July 27th on a Zoom meeting for the Littleton Conservation Commission. And I guess, Amy, would you do the honors and read the...
I would love to. The town of Littleton began conducting remote participation Zoom meetings pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law on March 19th, 2020. Since that time, unanticipated legal concerns relating to the open meeting law have been brought to our attention by the town clerk. Those concerns were supported by the Attorney General's office and confirmed by town council. One concern is that the chat function allows a parallel text conversation to a board's public meeting. Chat is essentially running commentary that is occurring, but it is not moderated or followed by the chair. All participants and listeners may not be aware of comments being made because some meeting participants join by phone and do not see these conversations. Another concern is between residents within the chat room, which are not incorporated into public record. In response to these concerns, the town will implement the following changes, which in no way prohibit any member of the public from participating in discussions and sharing information during a public meeting, and will ensure that all listeners and participants have equal access to this meeting. People that join the Zoom meeting are set so their microphones are muted. If you called in by phone, please use *6 to mute your phone so that the meeting can occur in an orderly fashion. We ask that people who join keep their microphones on mute so background noises do not interfere with the meeting. If you wish to participate in the meeting, please use the raise your hand function available on Zoom, or if you called in by phone, dial *9, which will activate the raise your hand function. The meeting host will notify the chairperson of the raised hands, and the chairperson will determine whether and when to allow public comment. When called upon, participants should unmute, then state their name and address. After speaking, we request the participant return their microphone back to mute.
So at this point, we just have a quorum? Okay.
Carl.
Where's Carl? Andrew?
You still have a quorum though, James.
Okay. Administrative, I guess we'd like to approve the minutes from July 13th, 2020. Does anybody get omissions or corrections?
So I just have two comments. So it says that I was absent. I don't know if you can write that I was in the audience, because I did get sworn in that I listened to the meeting, but that's neither here nor there. On the second page for the Mass DOT repair for the Air Road, I think it should state, because we did talk about it, that you were going to let MassDOT know that they did have to come in. It basically says would need to come in under, but I think we also talked about that you were going to actually let them know as well, so that it just doesn't happen. That was my only edit.
Okay, anybody else got any comments?
Nope, they look good.
Oh, there you are, Andrew.
Hey.
Would somebody make a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Oh, we got to do a roll call.
Yeah.
All right, I'll run roll call.
If you do them in the same order each time, that'd be really appreciated, because then I can just cut and paste.
Okay, I will take Carl off. All right, so Kyle, you are first.
Kyle Maxfield, yes.
Brian, you're second.
Brian Crowley, yes.
I'm third. Sarah Seward, yes. Julie?
Julie Rupp, yes.
Andrew?
Andrew Samarco, yes.
I think that's everyone. All unanimous.
You didn't call me?
Oh, did I say James? So James as well.
James Pickard, yes.
Okay. Great, vote carries. Okay.
So we guess I got time enough to go down to the land use permit and story walk.
Yeah, a lot of these things didn't necessarily carry over, but there are some things I'd like to add. The story walk, she didn't get me the stuff in. I thought she would. So
Okay.
happen next time.
I'm here, Amy. If I thought I emailed you the,
Yep.
it's Katrina Hagberg. I'm representing the library tonight. I emailed it to you. Maybe it just got crossed somehow. So I have the application. I can run through it and email it right back to you if you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I know we discussed about not having to get it signed by the fire.
I thought I attached it. Maybe I hit the wrong one. I don't know. So the library is doing our mini golf fundraiser virtually this year. And one of the things we love about the library mini golf fundraiser is the community aspect of it, which will be missing with a virtual thing. So what we're looking to do is to organize a couple free events that would potentially just bring people around the community and have something fun to do. And one idea we had was to run 2 story walks, which are basically, I think they're the frames. Rick Findlay said they had the frames, like a picture frame on a post, and you put a children's picture book in it and line it up along a trail. And so you walk through and read the story as you hike through the trail. So we propose doing one on a weekend, August 16th on Hartwell, I think, and another one during the week, August 20th on Cloverdale, if that's agreeable.
Any members got any comments?
We've actually done these in the past at Yap and Cobb, and they were really popular. So
Yeah, Diane Haddock, the librarian, is really excited to do it again. She's already thinking of books to pull. So I would love the collaboration between the 2 groups if that's possible.
Is this going to be spread over 2 or 3 hours or a day or something each time? I'm just thinking about parking in some of the parking areas.
That's a really great question. And spreading out people throughout the day was a concern as well during these current COVID times. We were proposing setting them up in the morning around by 10 and then taking them down around 5. And I'm happy to change those hours however you guys see fit, but that should give people plenty of time during the day to fit
run
in.
by appointment? So you
Yeah,
know.
that's what I was leaning towards. I think a lot of the ones that I've seen that might be more dense, you can just do appointment times as well. So they wait in their car, and then if they're there, they can just kind of go on their merry way. If you think that might, I think it's going to be really popular.
We hope it will be.
Yeah.
What about the parking though? I think our parking lots are
Thinking a sort
relatively limited. So if the lot is full, I would think you could
Is it
put something in the
self-limiting?
announcement that says, rather than, I could see appointments getting unwieldy, but maybe something that says, if the lot is full, please come back, or that type of thing, or don't park all the way down the road type of thing.
That's true. You don't want them on King Street, or not King Street,
Mm.
119, or even Hartwell.
There's
We're happy to put that in there.
but I was just thinking from a crowd control standpoint, we're somewhat self-limiting because the lots are small.
That's true. Yeah, we weren't really prepared to do an appointment system. I can
Give it a thought.
I can see if we can do something like that if you guys would like. I'm just not sure how that would work other than maybe a sign up genius or something that then it would be honor system, because we weren't planning to stand there to monitor it. It was just a free event to have people come to during the day.
I
I
think
think
you all will be able to run it beautifully. I think just to hear our 2 cents, I think is just important. So
Yes, definitely. So if parking's an issue, we can definitely put in the notice that if parking lot's full, please just try again later.
And I think also give people just to say how long it takes, so they have an expectation that they're not going to make, a full day of it, that in order to let others kind of be able to celebrate it.
Okay, we can do that. As I'm laying them out, I can walk it and determine how long it should be.
I think I'm always a fan of, getting people out into, onto the trails and the lands, and, reading is a definite bonus. So I think this is a nice opportunity to collaborate. And I think the parking is sort of self-limiting. It sort of helps our cause a little bit.
I think the parking lot's limited to 7 cars? Is that kind of rings a bell.
Yeah,
Cloverdale.
Cloverdale, you could probably squeeze in 7 or 8. Hartwell's bigger.
Yeah. But there's extra, I mean, you can park a couple cars out
Yeah.
a little bit, but I mean, we're not gonna, I can't foresee someone pulling up and seeing a, a mass of cars and, staying, but just from a COVID, like it's sort of self-limiting. I feel like it helps.
Yeah, we were planning to put a COVID reminder on there, asking people to have their masks with them should they be passing people in close quarters, and just reminding them that if there are groups ahead of them, they need to pause and before they approach the story.
I guess we kind of need to bring this to a vote from the members and move on.
Just one more thing. Are you going to have a reminder not to touch the signs, or what they'll be reading?
Yeah, that will be part of our announcement. And then, I mean, at some point you hope everyone is bringing hand sanitizer with them and whatnot too. So we're going to do all the reminders that on an individual level, there should be responsible for those things. And then before we collect them, I was going to plan to come and wipe them down and collect them just to protect us as well. And also, so when we change out the story for the second one, it's fine. But
would the town have available sanitizer on a post or something that you'd be able to use?
good question. I can look into that. It may be that we can borrow the library one for the day or something.
Yeah, the library one might be a good idea, or you can check with the fire chief.
All right.
It can
Great
explode if it's in the sun all day, though. So
Oh,
heads up.
Okay.
I didn't know that. So that's good to know. Cloverdale would be an issue. Hartwell, I could probably hide it in the shade.
People should be used to having their own hand sanitizer by now.
Yeah, hopefully there'll be masks and distance and hand sanitizer, and we'll clean it after. We'll just remind everyone.
Actually, ask me how I know that hand sanitizer explodes in the heat.
I can't wait to hear that story.
Dash in my car.
Oh no.
Ooh.
James, do you want to vote? I mean, it
I
appears.
think we should.
Okay.
Yes,
Right.
somebody needs to make a motion to allow this to happen.
Okay. Someone want to make that motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we support the story walk that the library is going to put on.
You're issuing a land use permit.
And okay, I make a motion that we issue a land use permit to the library for their story walk
For 2 parcels.
Yep. 2
at
parts.
Hartwell and Cloverdale.
That's
Do
what,
I hear a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
All those in favor?
no. So, okay. So we'll run through Kyle,
Maxfield, yes.
Brian,
Brian Crowley, yes.
Sarah Seward, yes. Julie,
Julie Rupp, yes.
Andrew,
Andrew Smarco, yes.
James.
James Pickard, yes.
So, vote is unanimous.
Thank you. And Amy, I'll send you the
Sorry
paperwork.
about that. Thanks.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Katrina.
Have a good night.
What's the officer vote?
That is just to vote chairman and vice chair or co-chair or whatever title you want to use.
Somebody want to make a motion to say who should be
What
what?
do we have now? Jim is chair and Sarah is co-chair?
Yeah.
Chair?
That sounds good to me.
I feel like they're doing a good job. I'm gonna make a make a motion to appoint or continue with James Pickard as chair and Sarah Seward as co-chair.
It's fine.
Second.
All those in favor? I guess we got to do a roll call vote again.
Okay. Kyle,
Kyle Maxfield, yes.
Brian,
Brian Crowley, yes.
Sarah Seward, yes. Julie,
Julie Rupp, yes.
Andrew,
Andrew Smarco, yes.
James.
James Pickard, yes.
Vote is unanimous.
Okay. Long Lake Wetlands Park Maintenance. What do we got with that?
Clean Lakes, well, Corey Godfrey has part-time staff now. So he's got someone who is going to be following through on that. Clean Lakes has the money to do the O&M at the Wetlands Park at Long Lake. So that is actually going to happen. And depending on how the money works out, they will see how much invasive species removal they can do and maybe get out the heavy stuff. And then maybe we get the land stewards or the Long Lake Neighborhood Association to help out with the rest of it.
We don't have to vote on this, do we? You're just giving us information.
Just info.
Okay. 628 Newtown Hill Road proposal shed.
That was actually turned out to be stalled. That's Fred Fields crossing down towards Acton. The owner wants to put in a shed, which I think is probably in the restricted area, but I told him he needs to get an as-built and do a certificate of compliance first anyway. So he stepped back a little bit. And I think once he has the as-built and is ready, it might be worth a couple of us going out and taking a look at his shed location all at the same time and see where that goes.
Okay.
So
Stephanie Mullen, Eagle Scout benches.
I had that in case she had an update. She's been looking at the bench locations, but no update right now.
Okay. Anna Orton, Eagle. She's got quite a crew working out at one of the first trails that you hit over Prouty that gets very wet in the spring, making some pretty impressive improvements out there. If you're ever in the area, take a look.
Is that the crushed stone that was just put in? Because I was looking at them like, who did this?
Yeah. Yeah, that was, since it's just maintenance of an existing road, it was exempt.
Did they put like little circle pieces of paper down first to see like what areas were wet? Because somebody put like clumps of these little colored pieces of paper down like as he walked, and I'm like, and now there's crushed stone in those areas. So
I didn't see those when I went out, but Hannah may have put those down so she could tell her crews where to go. Maybe. I mean, she must have had at least 12 or 15 people out there working.
They widened the trail substantially, so it's really
all the overarching. They can recreate the box of the road in there.
That's great. Sounds like she's a good leader.
Yeah.
Yes.
But she didn't. Did she come in and file with us for this?
Well, no, because it's on Prouty.
Okay. Private property. Okay. Enforcement order 5 Scott Road.
Again, I wasn't sure where that was going to go. I have spoken to DEP and to Peter, and DEP talked to Peter, and he asked that we not really have much discussion because he couldn't be here tonight. He is getting in contact back with his consultant, Matt Morrow, about moving ahead.
Okay. Good. Meadow mowing and hay license.
I think we probably table that to the end. I don't know if anybody look at that meadow mowing thing and or had any comments, but might not want to get into it right now.
Okay.
I started reading it, but I definitely haven't gotten all the way through it.
Yeah, and also remember that this is not a directive. It is guidelines. For example, Mary Shepherd is not going to be maintained as a shrub area, but it's an example of what you could do.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a whole other discussion time. And
yeah.
Well, I would think the property where I call it the Hager property, but it was Morgan property, that there would be meadow mowing there at some point, or should be anyway. You're in Bumblebee.
right.
Okay. Other updates and administrative actions.
Do we want to start at the 7:45, the public hearing?
Well, maybe we should.
Okay.
I don't have a clock in front of me. That's 8 o'clock, I think.
Nope. 7:45.
Okay. And let's go with it. Okay, I didn't see it down at the bottom. Public meeting 268 Howard Harwood RAD RDA U32-2B for removal of emerald ash borer killed trees. Who wants to speak to that?
Are they coming in, Amy?
She's right here.
Yes,
She unmuted herself.
that is our property, and we have 16 dead trees that were
Can you speak up just a little bit? I didn't hear how many trees you said.
16 dead trees
Okay.
that are pretty close to our house. There are more dead trees, but we're not looking to remove those. It's just the ones that are close to our house, within striking distance. We had somebody.
Photographs that you can share us?
I do have photographs that I put in the application. I don't have anything in front of me that I can share right now, but they should be with the application itself when I sent it in.
Okay. So Bernadette, can you tell us, so imagine tell us kind of if they're all the same type of tree and their diameters, like how old they are, just kind of walk us through what we might see if we were there.
Okay. They are all ash trees. They are kind of around the house, and there we go. Yeah, this is the one that you're seeing right now is one of the bigger trees. We do have smaller trees that are also dead, and we marked all of them. You can see some of the smaller ones on the side here. At first, we weren't sure if they were dead or not, but this year, when the leaves didn't come out, and we actually had a tree fall earlier in the late spring, it was pretty close to the house, and that's really what concerned me. So you'll find mostly smaller trees. I would say there's probably 3 of the bigger ones, like the one that you see in the picture right there. And then the intent is to leave, not completely cut them down, but to leave about 10-foot stumps for critters to use, but just to remove the threat from them striking the house if they were to fall. Honestly, I can't estimate how old they are, but so the biggest one I think would be probably a foot in diameter. What do you say? It's about a foot?
10 feet or 10 inches to
10 inches to a foot in diameter.
Bernadette, did you ever chat with like an arborist or anyone to kind of walk you through if they were, looking at that? I appreciate that you're willing to keep them as what we kind of call as snag trees so that other can inhabit them and use those trees. That's very thoughtful of you. But I was curious if you ever chatted with an arborist. If you're going through all this work to do that, if there's something else that might be a hazard while you're bringing someone in to do this.
We did. So we did have somebody come out here. I believe they were from Tree Masters in Westford. And they came, and to be honest, at first I didn't know what kind of trees they were. And so they helped us kind of determine what kind of trees they were. And they explained that it was all through the ash borer, the emerald ash borer that killed them. Because like you said, I wasn't even sure that they were 100% dead until they actually came out and we did a walk around of the property.
Sorry, do you know what evidence they had that it was the emerald ash borer? Do you know?
They just looked at the type of tree and they could tell that it was an ash tree. And to be honest, I think we're all just assuming that it is the ash borer.
Because there are particular types of holes they make. I just didn't know if they actually identified.
Yeah, you can see the D-shaped holes.
Right. because I have dead ash on my property, but I've never seen, and then they've been dying for a long time. Before the emerald ash borer supposedly came. So, you know, anyway, I just didn't know if they had definitive evidence that it was emerald ash borer. But
There's some kind of a blight that hits them. We've got to have had ash trees around here, and there's some kind of a blight that seems to do them in. I would be kind of concerned about leaving it a dead tree if you got little kids or something around. Sooner or later, they're gonna go over. I mean, that's, if you're hiring somebody to come in and take them down, at least take them down probably to 4 or 5 feet or something. In my mind, that's just my opinion.
I agree. I mean, those things, all it takes is a good storm and they're nasty. They do some damage, so.
Yeah, I agree with Jim and Andrew. I mean, in the picture we saw before, close to the house, I mean, they're clearly a hazard to your, house and your yard. I did have a question though regarding if it's the ash borer, do we want to leave 10 feet of the tree for the borers to continue to eat? I don't know if we knew anything. I wish Matt was here. Could ask Matt.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say.
I'm concerned about, like, I love the idea of leaving a snag for our woodpeckers, but can the woodpeckers eat the ash borers, or are we, should the entire tree be taken?
Julie, that's a good question. I thought that if they were inhabited, that the whole tree had to be taken and it had to be
properly managed,
properly disposed somehow.
Where it is so pervasive in this whole area, I think entire Worcester County is the area.
Over in Middlesex.
Middlesex. If you can burn it, great. Wherever we are. Burn it, great, but they attack the living trees. So if there's a dead tree sitting there, it's not going to perpetuate them.
All right, thank you. That was helpful. I didn't know that. So it sounds like if they're dead, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, they do say sometimes if you think one is, kind of half alive and might go, the best thing almost is to girdle it so that the emerald ash borer will still come in while the tree is a little bit alive, then cut it down and kill the emerald ash borer. I'm not sure how effective that is, but.
That's an interesting strategy.
Okay.
There will soon be a whole thing on Littleton, on LCTV on it.
All right, so how would we like to direct Bernadette and her family? I support the removal. I personally would like to know if it was invaded by the emerald ash borer, but I recognize they still need to be removed, or at least taken to the height that the owner wishes.
Well, I think, Amy, didn't you say you saw the D-shaped holes?
Yeah, I certainly didn't look at all of them, but one of the closer ones, you could see it.
Okay.
I think there's some rules and regulation. I know you can't, I don't think you can take them out of state. I'm not even sure you can take them out of town. So I would think probably like somebody like Tree Masters would just come in and chip it and get rid of it. Would probably be the best bet.
So, Amy, what are you seeking from us? Is this? Or
This is a determination of applicability, a negative determination 3.
Okay.
Somebody want to make a motion to let this go forward to tree removal? Andrew, where are you?
I'm over here. I will make a motion that the commission issue a -3 determination for the removal of the ash trees on the property for DEP file number.
Nope, RDA.
RDA.
That's right, RDA. So I'll leave it at that.
And shall I make it a condition that they can take more than 10 feet if they so choose?
Exactly.
Yes.
All right. So I second it.
All those in favor? I guess you have to have a roll call, Sarah.
So, Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, yes.
Brian.
Brian Crowley, yes.
Sarah Seward, yes. Julie?
Julie Rupp, yes.
Andrew?
Andrew Smarko, yes.
James?
James Pickett, yes.
Okay, you are unanimous in that. Thank you for bringing this forward to us, Bernadette.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
You too.
What do you got for a clock, Sarah?
Oh, I have 7:59.
So,
Go ahead with the 8 o'clock.
yeah. I guess I can at least read it through. Continued public hearing, notice of intent, Healy Corner, 195 Tehadawon, R07-10, Mass DEP file number 204-899, construction of an open space development, including tree clearing, grubbing, grading, construction of a subdivision roadway, stormwater management system, septic systems, and multi-single-family dwellings. Is somebody available to speak?
Good evening, Bruce Ringwald from GPR representing Glavy Family Nominee Trust.
So I think let's, Bruce, I think it's probably helpful if you want to just pick up where we left. I think we had left with some kind of tasks and things to go forward with. If you want to bring us forward on the update, that would be a great start.
Super. I said I would dig into and find the alternatives analysis that I had submitted before. I went back and found that it is, there are 3 different places. The first one is the waiver request requirement information was updated in September of 23 of 2019, and that was submitted to the commission at that time. Then there was also the applicant had done a environmental piece that I disagree with having that there, but that's neither here nor there. And then on the November meeting, I reviewed everything that had been submitted and went through the purpose and the issues that were at hand relative to that, and that's pretty much summarized in the minutes of that meeting. That was the November 19th meeting, and I'll gladly go over any and all of that again at the commission's desire. We also walked the site again this past week, if my memory serves me right, with Brian and Andrew and Kyle, and that's where I'm at.
Amy, were you there too?
Oh, and Amy. I wasn't leaving you out. I was thinking of commissioners. Sorry.
It was really hot, and I hadn't eaten that day.
It was very hot.
The deer flies, I'm just saying.
No poison ivy, Andrew?
No, I was lucky. I mean, I went through a lot of it. And
you did? With shorts?
Yes, very lucky.
So where are we? We got any commissioners got any comments about their site walk?
Sure. So it was the first time I'd seen the site, and I recognized that it was kind of the start of the summer here, warm, dry, that matter. But Bruce took us pretty much across the entire site. We definitely hit the proposed wetland crossing and showed the proposed restoration areas. I guess my feeling after seeing what was there for a wetland, yes, it's a wetland, but personally, I think what Bruce is proposing, or what his team is proposing, in the long run, will actually be a better wetland area than what I've seen out there. That crossing area was trees and some mud, maybe. I'm not trying to belittle the wetland. I just think that I think it could be a better wetland there. It could serve a better purpose than what survives there right now.
If I may, it was down trees, not standing trees.
Right.
Brian, you got any comments?
Yeah, I would sort of, I came away with kind of the same feeling as Kyle did. The wetland crossing that is there, is a wetland by definition. As Kyle was describing, I think that the wetland replication areas have, more potential and potentially more benefit to the ecosystem in there than what's already existing.
Andrew, you got any feelings?
I would certainly echo that, and considering the other plans that are to be proposed, if this plan doesn't go forward, I think this is definitely the best route, going forward for the property compared to the alternatives. I mean, a lot more damage could be done back there.
Let's follow that track and go through, if we were to follow this process, so we go through the waiver. Would like to talk a little bit about CR and construction. And Bruce, this has nothing to do with you guys or the project. We just really want to make sure we're not going to get stuck holding the bag at times we have with no CRs. So yeah, we know that there's been some discussion of when the CR has to be official. I recognize that the state of, our Commonwealth may not, or they may be reacting quickly. I don't know. I'm not privy to that, but I'd like to have it set kind of in stone, the expectation of when we're going to have that. I know our last conversation left that it was going through council for review. So if we could talk about that, and I want to make sure that we're all on board for the waiver. And so if we can kind of start to come back to the last meetings and start to tick off those things, I think would be helpful for this discussion. So perhaps Amy and Bruce, you could bring us up to speed on where the CR language is and when we think that has to be approved before, whether it's, shovel in the ground or a building permit. What does that look like?
Yeah, let me I think Sherry misspoke a little bit at the last one. The planning board decision does say that the developer shall have obtained approval from EEA for the CRs. And they had to be recorded contemporaneously with the endorsed definitive subdivision plan. So they have written it in that it needs to be done early.
And I agree that is the language there. I think that having it so that it's, Amy had made mention of some language of it should be approved by everybody and submitted to the state, because the state can take some time, but then you know that it's in the process with the state. And I think that that's probably a better language from that standpoint. If everything is in place and filed, town council and Amy and the planning board are all on board with the language and it's submitted to the state, I'd like to be able to allow them to start to begin construction. And if you want to hold it on a certificate of occupancy of the first lot or something of that getting cleared back through the state, because we all know that the state can take several months to go through, and there's no telling how much time it's going to be. I mean, some things have been going quick and a lot have been going real slow.
So are you going to have the planning board decision revised?
If it's just one that has to be done, then I would go in for that. If everything was in and everybody was ready to start, then yes, I'd go in and I'd ask for that relief to change that, because, it would be, I think, a shame to have everything in place and everybody agree on the language and have the lack of state action holding up everything. I mean, they tell us that they have housing requirements that need to be met and all these various things that need to be met, but yet they're hardly opening their offices these days. So I'm trying to just make sure that we have a manner that you guys are comfortable, tying it to the first CO. No one's trying to get out of it. The language has been put in place. And rather than having to come back to two different boards to move forward, if I have to come back to one, then I have to come back. If I have to come back to two, if that's the hold up, then then I'd like to, then I'd, do that at the applicant's request. But I'm just trying to make it a smooth path.
So I believe in unison. So I think that if planning board is willing to make accommodations and conservation is on with that, I do believe that they have to be fully endorsed by all parties and already on its way to the state. Like it has already been stamped that the state has received it. I would feel comfortable with that, but I do feel as though there has to be an end stop. And so whether it is, that the wetlands crossings are done and built, or parking, I'd be interested to hear what the commissioners want to use as that, okay, if all of a sudden XYZ hasn't happened, then we have to be able to stop to regather.
Totally agree.
I'm curious what commissioners would like to do.
I was wondering if you allowed them to do some of the upfront lots, but you held back on the one where they want to go to the crossings and stop where the two separate lots. And until that is completed, I still have some leverage somehow.
My only thing on that is that when we go to do that crossing to get there, assuming that that's permitted, I got to be taking that material out and putting it into the replication area. So we'd be doing that whole big crossing. I mean, I think that the replication materials definitely has to be in place, because half the soils will come out of the where we're doing the crossing, or a portion of the soils will come out where we're doing the crossing. A lot will have to be brought in because we're doing a 3-to-1 replication. But still, that expense of that crossing would be, tied to that portion of development. And so if I didn't do that, I got to get that portion going.
Well, either that or hold back on the building permits or something until it's completed, but you can do the crossing.
Yeah.
Bruce, just commission your order of go in terms of construction, because obviously we're not all here together to look at those schedules, but just tell us, so where do we start? What's like the first 1, 2, 3?
For the site itself?
Correct.
Well, obviously there'd be the placement of erosion control barriers on the site. There would be the clearing for the access road for Dennis Circle, the clearing for the common septic system, the clearing for the basin area and the replication area that's adjacent to the basin. I don't know if Alfred Trail would start right away or not, because I know that there's a lot of infrastructure work that has to be done up above, and that could be something that's ongoing, independent of Alfred Trail, but the contractor may also be set up to do Alfred Trail at the same time. So I don't know if, I get the permits and the manner to do it. I don't set up the ways and the means and methods of the contractor. So I'm trying, that would be the general gist of it. The road has to go in with its utilities before they can get a building permit. So, all that would have to go in, and it would be the same for Alfred Trail and access to the 2 lots in the back. That has to be in and to a point before they can get a building permit on those.
So it sounds as though you've got enough work that can go forward while the Commonwealth reviews the CR. So yeah. I would feel comfortable holding it to the start of a building permit.
Okay.
Not a OC. I think that's too late.
That's fine.
Anyone have thoughts on that? So that they can't start to build a house to actually open a permit until we have the CR.
That brings up a question about the houses, though, because lots 15 and 16 are pretty much 100% in the buffer zones, including within like the 50 to 100 and even the 50. So we haven't seen anything at all about these houses. The building envelope is going to be very, very small without a waiver for the lots, or is this is something I'm not clear on right now. Is this waiver process now also include, what? on lots 15 and 16. So I'm a little concerned about that part of the process, that, you know, the subdivision gets approved and, you know, through that there's, you know, obviously I don't know if it's going to be like Cooper, for example, where lots were kind of parceled off by builder. And so we don't know who we're going to get for a builder. And then, you know, do they go through this waiver process too? I mean, they must have to. So that's something I could use some, I guess, clarification on. And then one other thing I wanted to, I guess, put my 2 cents in on is, you know, we're in a very dry part of the year. And so while I do acknowledge the crossing, you know, isn't necessarily running water, it is a wetland. It's been delineated as a wetland. That's why we're here. And so I just don't want that to get lost because, you know, a dry day in July. So I just wanted to, you know, provide my 2 cents on that. But I guess the thing that's concerning me the most is, what are we agreeing to having built on lots 15 and 16? We have no information other than, Bruce, I know you gave us some maps, but what you had said to us last meeting was that you don't know what's going to be built there. It's just kind of a representation. So if you have more information, I would love to hear it. I would love some clarification on what we're agreeing to.
Certainly. On the plans right now, the house footprints that are shown, we have submitted architectural plans to the town that are representative of those house footprints. I did notice through Amy pointing it out to me that on sheet C 6.2, there is a little bit of grading in the 50-foot buffer zone, and I would say that that is not permissible. What I would say is that the house locations as shown on the engineering plans that have been submitted, and no work in the 50-foot buffer zone on those lots is what we're asking for in this order of conditions as part and parcel of development for the whole site. The plan was to give the commission a view of everything that is proposed for development within your jurisdiction. Now, if Julie was to buy lot 16 and wanted to use a different house footprint and wanted to turn it 90 degrees, then in my feeling, that's not what was approved on the plan. And as a representative of Julie, I'd come back before the commission and say, hey, we need to file a new notice of intent for lot 16 because there's a change plan and there's a change scenario here. So I would say what you're approving is what's on the plan, minus any work in the 50-foot buffer, because that was not intended.
Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong. We had this. We brought this up in the field during our field walk. The exact same questions that Julie just had. What you said that, you know, the building footprint could change based on the owner or whatnot, but currently the way that they're laid out right now, each of those lots would have to file for its own NOI going forward anyway, correct?
No, if they were approved the way they're laid out now, and they came in and they stayed within that area and that disturbance and didn't go in outside of that disturbance, as you guys saw when you were out there, there's a substantial opening in the area in the center there, and we'd set the house up. We would keep everything out of the 50-foot buffer zone. We would set the erosion control and construction limits on that. And you could come out and view that it's, you know, outside the 50-foot line. And that would be the work that would be permitted. If they did change the building, if they did change orientation, then yes, I feel it should be a new notice of intent.
Okay.
Okay. Are we willing to, is the developer willing to put a deed restriction on it?
Deed restriction on what?
On that 50, so that they wouldn't have to come back in, so they know really what their footprint, I mean, they can still have alterations, obviously, but put
I can ask, I have not asked that question, so
I'm asking, is that something that would help the commissioners feel more comfortable if they're willing to put a deed restriction on that?
I think we did that on the Hartwell Ave properties, that they couldn't change the configuration of the house years ago. It had to be what was presented. I remember
Well,
we
I'm
did
okay
that.
with changing configuration. I'm just saying that the 50 foot is the stopgap so that they can't go past that. I don't know how the commissioners feel about that. It's done, but we just don't do it often. But I think in this scenario, it might help, help as a solution.
I,
Sorry.
my former concern is not about the not working, well, it is a concern about not working in the 50, but it's the crossing itself as a result of giving us land. I mean, this is a precedent of, if you can give us enough land, we will allow wetland crossing. And it's not, it doesn't fit into the waiver of our regulation to allow a wetland crossing because of financial benefit. And they haven't shown that part of it, the feasibility part of it. So that's what worries me. It's a precedent of, if you give us enough, if you give the town enough, we will allow you to go through a wetland.
I agree, and I that's not where I was coming from when I spoke earlier about what I saw out there for wetlands. And I mean, obviously, having the town receive the land would be fantastic, but my point of view was the overall improvement of the wetlands. Not that it had nothing, for me personally, has nothing to do with the town getting the land.
So if I may,
But I just have a concern too, that when you mitigate a wetland, there's no guarantee that when mitigated wetlands, it's very difficult to keep and maintain them and make sure that they last and are successful as the original wetland.
I've got a question to go with the CRs with these trails. I'm hearing, to me, it's a public benefit, but I'm also hearing it's going to empty out into the K property. And I'm kind of concerned about having people walking down a road that is at least the other day when I was over there, it said private road, but I understand from what Amy told me, it was supposed to become a public way. The town was supposed to take it over, but I want to be guaranteed that there's not going to be a big problem if people start walking down through their property over there. And that's one of the selling points in my mind, is you've got all these connecting trails that are being established within the town.
if I may respond to a couple of these. Last one first. The request was to tie together the town of Littleton Conservation Trust land to the town owned land on the opposite side of the property. They wish to link those trails together and to allow these trails to be able to come off of Tahatawan, Harwood, and be able to head across and link these pieces together. As far as to where they're going to and what conservation trails they go to past that point, I don't know. I have heard they want to have it go so they can get a trail all the way eventually to the train station. So, you know, I have no control over K or anything. I know this is a piece that they've been trying to link together. Backing up a little bit in here, Anna, we're not just providing land to the town, just giving land for a crossing. Your waiver regulations say in the public interest. There has been public interest in the property in the back, and that is, yes, indeed, something that we're looking to present. Consistent with the intent and purpose of the bylaw, and protecting the wetlands and working along these lines, preventing pollution to the water and the groundwater and the public and private water supplies. The least environmentally damaging practical alternative. I've talked at length about an alternative way going around the buffer zone, around the wetlands, that wraps all the way around And the problem that occurs with that is that we're on a site where obviously when you're going parallel to a wetland, the wetland is on the down gradient side. And this would be putting drainage replication and drainage mitigation for the drive the whole way in closer to the wetlands and right adjacent. What we've done with the proposed crossing the way it is we're outside of the zones, except for a very minimal part in the upper part of the Alfred Trail where we're right at the pinch point between 250s. And then the low point is outside the buffer, the 50-foot buffer, and the drainage is outside the 50-foot buffer, and a portion of the drive is outside. Then the crossing itself is at a high point. So the drainage from that drive goes back to the area of treatment outside the 50-foot buffer and outside the 50-foot buffer onto the big upland peninsula. So those things have all been taken into control. It says that the actions would result in a significant net environmental improvement in the conditions of the buffer zone. That improvement of the existing stormwater conditions to the maximum extent practical, exceeding the Mass DEP stormwater standards. So we've used the highest grade storm for this. We've used the Cornell model versus the model that is under the requirements. And we've met all the drainage for the development, even to and including with this, the Cornell model. And Green International has reviewed all of that. So we've exceeded through that. We've provided a protection of the buffer zone with the end of the wetlands over a majority of the parcel of the property. We're sectioning off over 30 acres that will not have future development on it. And we've got less than a third of it as the developable portion. And then a good portion of that is portions of property that won't be touched as well. So out of 44 acres, there's way less than a third of that, less than 11 acres that is in the development window, including all of the area of the lots, which, you know, obviously that won't all be happening. So it's not just a giving of land and how much land can we give so that the board would grant some item of relief, you know. So I take that back.
Any of the other board members got any comments? Amy, you got any feelings?
I mean, there's assorted plan and other type issues. I think you kind of have to get past this crossing issue first.
Okay.
Yeah, so I feel as though we have a couple items and we've just, while it's been good discussion, we've talked around them. I feel like we need to just go back and Amy, based on maybe some of your notes, we can come up with one and try and come to an agreement, go on to the next one, just so that we can stay the course on discussions. So, or the commission, whichever one you want to talk about. I think one of the easier ones might be the CR. And at what point do we wish for them to stop work if we don't have it approved? So we need some stopgap on the CR.
I think you had a good suggestion of the building permit.
But if the give is a crossing for the CR, that kind of concerns me. Like if the crossing happens and then we have no CR, or we get in a situation that we were in at Hartwell where we had all sorts of encroachments.
I don't understand. We did the crossing, but there'd be no CR. I don't understand.
No, I'm concerned about allowing the crossing before we have a CR in place, because that is the offer of the public benefit.
Right, but what we had mentioned before is that all of the town bodies, the Conservation Commission and the Selectmen and the applicant had signed the CR and had been submitted to the state. And so everything was in play and we were just waiting on the state to sign it before we got building permits to allow them to start construction on the site, but not building permits.
So Julie, I think what Julie's saying, Bruce's worst case scenario, which has happened, that all of a sudden the development starts, we haven't started building, but all of a sudden we have an open space and say worst case scenario, the developer walks and we have nothing and we have an unstable site. So we always, you know, our best interest is always here because of the wetlands and because of the land. So I think we always have to be realists if a developer walks away and we have nothing. So Julie, I didn't mean to speak for you, but I think that might be one of the tracks you were looking at.
Why would you say you have nothing? We'd have a subdivision plan that will have been filed with the Registry of Deeds that will.
No, meaning that if a developer walks away and the site is open, then who is on the hook to protect the wetlands that may be in the middle of a crossing? We're just talking about, you know, an economic catastrophe or something. So we just always have to look at what is our stop measure for the CR. So,
Bruce, I'll remind you the Kimball situation or behind the Toyota dealership, that somebody started a project there and then walked away. That did happen.
It did. And it had erosion control and everything was kept in check and the basins were in place, and it was at a point that there was no damage while everybody walked away, but it definitely did happen.
Yeah, so I mean, we've had this experience.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. I agree.
But if the site is, you know, beginning to be developed and then there's some economic catastrophe and the CR is not finalized and the developer walks away, the site is already impacted, but we have no CR. That's my concern.
Well, why would you not have a CR? The owner would have signed.
It doesn't go through the state.
Okay, but the owner would have signed for it. The town would have signed for it. So we'd be waiting on the state. So it would, if there was.
Well, why don't you want to wait? So why don't you want to wait on the state then? If it's such low risk, I'll ask you that question.
I'm not. I'm saying that we want to allow for them to start being able to do work.
Sure, I understand that, and you know. So my question is, if the state is such low risk and it will, you know, get there eventually, why wouldn't
because of the timing, Julie? You know, if it takes it forever to happen, then we may lose time on starting the development. That's the big reason. There's going to be several months of work before anybody can pull a building permit, and so we're assuming that during that time frame, the state can get things signed off, and we're saying yes during that time frame we would do that.
So why wouldn't the state sign off? Do you know, Amy? Why wouldn't the state sign off? What are we risking?
There may be some language in there that they want to tweak. There may be something coming and going. We do need to figure out the bike trail language, which is not in there yet. And I'll say we have one CR where the town did sign off on everything and it never got submitted to EEA. It's got to be redone. The owner's not redoing it, but we can't use the parking area that's built because the CR is not accepted yet.
But what we said here was that we agreed that we wouldn't do anything until it's submitted. So we're going a step beyond that. That particular case, the owner didn't submit. We're saying we will submit before we get started.
Well, when does the endorsed definitive subdivision plan need to get recorded? Is that like in the very near term? Because that's what the planning board is tying it to.
They're tying that to that, and it would be, you know, I've got to get through these steps, then I've got to make the changes that they asked for to happen to the plans, and then the process has to also get there to be endorsed. So that's going to be a little bit of time down the road as well.
But that's before any construction starts.
That's way before any construction. Yeah. Way before any construction.
Do the two run parallel, Bruce? Like the CR is someone, I think we're almost done with that. So you're focusing on planning board. Are they still along the same track so that the CR is still moving and you're still moving?
The The CR is definitely moving. The CR is out of our control and in the council's control.
Yeah, it's at town council.
It's at town council.
Okay. So it sounds like the CR might be done before everything else.
Well,
It's a possibility.
yeah, it might be submitted to the state before everything else.
Right.
If he submitted to the state, you know, who knows how the state's going to do.
And the state does not want the town to sign off on it until they've had their first crack at it.
That's fine.
We don't sign yet, but it will go through planning board and board of selectmen before we submit it to the state.
So the state has major concerns, and then there's language that needs to be adjusted, but construction's already happened, and there's some sort of impasse about the language. Then what?
Well, I think what Bruce said, though, is that for the final plan to be submitted, the CR has to at least go through its first review with the state. So the planning board would already know from the state if there's a lot of red flags or not.
Right.
So we would know that before any shovels in the ground.
Correct, because
correct.
The final plan, Bruce, can you explain this again?
Right. Yeah, I didn't understand that part. Okay.
So the subdivision plans as submitted show 17 lots. We submitted an exhibit plan that shows the 16 lots, the removal of one and the reorientation of the open space lots, the remodeling or the reworking of lot 15 in open space parcel A, giving more land to parcel A, and adding the trails on and showing that the trails are entirely within the open space, so there's no easements that are necessary for those. The plans that were initially submitted need to be modified to reflect those lot line changes. There's no grading changes. There's no changes relative to the crossings. There's no changes relative to the wetland replication or any of that stuff. The drainage basins is still the same size. It's not going to be reduced to reflect one less lot of development. We chose to keep it at the same size. So again, another oversize issue to the basin. So those changes have to occur, and that's where we'll be running parallel with the CR going forward.
So I think with that said, I feel more comfortable with the building permit as our stop period.
And Bruce, when does the land transfer to the town?
You would remember that better than I. It's in the CR. My recollection is that
it's not in the CR. It's like a separate.
I don't remember. It can't happen until after the plans are filed, because you need to have the plans filed to make reference for the deed. I don't remember, Jamie. I do not remember.
Yeah, because there is discussion. Is the CR initially going to be held by the current owner?
I think that it's set up so that they are held by the current owner first. Looking around my desk for the decision, and
Bruce, it looks like you're looking around the woods.
I'm looking around the woods for my decision, and you would think I'd be able to find it laying on the ground.
His head also disappears.
I know, that's weird.
Oh, you wish. You only wish. Here it is. All right. I do recall it was a condition. I don't remember what that condition was. So general conditions, setbacks, utilities, water, each lot, fertilizer,
Hey, Bruce, while you're looking at that, can you also remind me how close the replication areas will be to the road, like the crossing, the road where the crossing is?
Sure. Can I share a screen?
I think so.
I think you should have control, yeah.
I do have control. I just wanted to ask permission. All right, here. Whoops. Share. There we go. Screen 2. Share. Ba, ba, ba. All right. Hang on a second. I got to get us down to the right pages. All right. Can you all see that? Okay. So this is the area of the crossing with 1,500 square feet, 1,505 square feet of crossing. This area right here represents, I got to go 2 more sheets, I'm sorry. Well, let me stick with that for a minute. So, I'm back. Okay, so there's the crossing is right here. There's drainage from Alfred Trail that comes down Alfred Trail here from the high point of the crossing back to this proposed sand filter. And then there's hydraulic overflow from there towards the wetlands. This area right here is one of the replication areas. A portion of that, that's like 2,600 square feet, if I remember right, and only 900 square feet's coming out of that area because that's the area where we're going to work in between the big pines, not have to cut anything down and work along the edges, these 2 edges of the wetlands here to make that all happen. Going to go, so that's the one area. The other area, if you come right up, whoops, come right here to the top of this. I'm going to go to the next sheet, but you see right adjacent to Alfred Trail is this area right here. And when I go back 1 sheet, see if I can zoom in a little. Okay, so this area right here, again, Alfred Trail coming in, is the other, and this is the larger area wetland replication. It's downslope of the field, downslope of the drainage basin, downslope of the discharge from the basin, as well as the infiltration into the ground of drainage here. And this is the area where the majority of the wetland replication will occur, where there's the only trees that are really standing in this area now are dead, and they have invasives growing up them. And bear with me 1 second, and I'm going to get you to the areas of those. Just need to change a few sheets here. Oops, sorry, went too far. All right. All right, so this larger area is 3,600 square feet of replication. And this smaller area down here is 2,622 square feet, of which 900 square feet will be carved out of that area. Does that answer the question, Julie?
Yeah, partially. Thank you. I also,
What was the other part?
the distance between the replication area and the roadways, and then also it does show on the map that the drainage basins are going to feed the wetland replication. So how
Drainage basins as well as being in the water table.
Yep, right. That's right. And then I guess one of my concerns is for like road salt. And so, the road salt draining into the replication areas as well as the crossing.
Okay,
How do you mitigate that?
Julie, that's a great question.
If road salt is used, this basin off of the Alfred Trail is a sand filter. So the sand filter will be filtering out that salt. the second one here, this other basin, I'm gonna have to go back one page to get the basin. Here we go. This basin has a sediment forebay, as well as all the catch basins have are hooded. So you're going to have the sediment forebay, and then you have the whole basin area. So you'll have the areas for that any salt that's used to be pulled out of there. And we have noted in our erosion control notes, and I assume that it would be a condition of your order conditions, and if not, it was going to make reference to follow the plans, that there has to be a certified wetland expert overseeing the excavation and construction of the replication areas. Oxbow Associates is the wetland scientists that have been involved with this site. I've done a number of wetland replications with them that have been in place for multiple years now, and some that just a little bit of time, and they're all doing extremely well. All whatever sizes we've done are all going and growing well. They're out on site and making certain that the contractor is excavating adequate material, making sure that adequate material is put in, writing reports on it, and had great luck with that.
But you're not saying that Oxbow is going to be the liaison for the developer?
They have been up to date, and I assume they will continue to be, just as I assume we'll continue to be involved.
Okay, I just want new commissioners to know that that's an assumption. It's not a given.
That is 100% correct. I could get fired tonight.
Okay. I was more concerned with Oxbow.
Thanks, Sarah.
Just being honest, Bruce.
I appreciate that.
So I guess I'm not aware of any sand filtration that will take care of like the chlorides, and so chloride contamination in groundwater, and wetlands is a major concern in the state. I mean, it's pretty widespread. And so I'm not aware of a mechanical filtration for chlorides or for road salt. And that's, part of why we have major issues. So I am concerned about having a crossing. And so there will be contributions from the road. And I understand the drainage that, there will be drainage diverting it over to a basin, but then that basin is going to feed, at least partially feed, the wetlands. And so I just have some concerns about permanent impacts to the wetlands and the shallow groundwater, which are interconnected, into, as the wetlands in the other acreage of the property. And, there's a vernal pool as well.
Vernal pool is upgradient of all of this.
Groundwater is connected, and so my concern is, it by virtue of doing the replication that we don't create a larger issue, and how do we keep plants alive if it gets too salty? And I think I personally am unwilling to tell a subdivision that they can't use salt at all on their roads. That's a safety issue. And so that's just something that concerns me about this plan, is that we on some level are looking at permanent impacts to the wetlands and the shallow groundwater in this area.
Although it is pretty common though to say no salt around a wetland. That at least other towns
roads are draining
as well.
But it seems like the roads of the complex are draining into these basins, and then these basins are discharging into the wetland replication areas. And so I don't know what the calculations look like as far as what contributes to what, and obviously that would change depending on the season. But I have some concerns about diverting a ton of road drainage to our replication areas.
I totally agree with that. There is a major chloride problem in Massachusetts. See.
Are there alternatives for sourcing water to the wetlands, Bruce, and kind of making some of that salt go elsewhere as a different source point? Or a way to minimize that?
I'm trying to remember what we have in our basins. Got the hooded catch basin. Suppose they could have pillows in there, but you have the hooded catch basin that's collecting it. We've reduced the width of the road over other roads, so that's smaller. You got settling time in the sumps and in the forebay. I can't think of anything. I mean, you can change it so that there's no chloride used. You know, come up with something else. Whatever.
Yeah, because the settling areas, of course, just will deal with the sediment, but not chloride. Chloride is very, as Julie mentioned, chloride is very difficult because it just dissolves and gets into the groundwater.
Doing a whole lot better than the existing roads that are out there with heavy salt loads. I'm telling you. I agree with your comments.
What's the town using? They haven't been putting out a lot of salt. They did some, but not a lot. I don't know what they're using.
I think like most of the communities right now, they're using a malt mix with the salt so that they use less salt and it adheres to the road and it's not mixed with sand. And they typically pre-treat rather than post-treat so that the roads need less material on it. But I don't know exactly what they're doing in town now. I know that they've been working on it in coordination with Light and Water Department, but I don't know exactly what they're doing.
It seems like the cars like it less and the roads really like it less.
Yeah.
Roads are degrading more, whatever.
I agree.
So, okay. James, you want to kind of come back to the kind of checklist of discussions here?
Yeah, I think we better.
Amy, do you have a running list, or does someone have a list? I know at the beginning we talked about some of these things.
Well, we got showing grading for Nellie's Nellie Waste parking location changed.
Yeah, we have it shown on the plan. And I'm good to go with where it's shown. And if we want to make a field adjustment, you know, get Amy and or any of you out there to adjust it. I mean, when Amy and I and Brian and Kyle and Andrew were walking the other day, there's several different places it could be at the end of Nellie's path. For John's Way, it's very definitive because there's a lot of things that are associated with where that one is. But the other one has flexibility to move around. It's just a matter of everybody agreeing to where it is. I would suggest that, you know, we just make an agreement to meet in the field for that one when we get to that point.
You agreeable with that, Amy?
Well, I think the plans as they do need to show something. And
They
so,
do.
Bill, you're fine. And then I think we almost need to write into condition that there may be consideration of adjusting it.
And the plans do show, and they do show an area.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I think we've talked about the grading for lots 15, 16, to stay
Yeah.
50-foot period, no disturb.
I would make certain that there's a condition that there's, you know, this approval does not authorize any work in the 50-foot buffer zone on those lots, other than the crossing.
Are the
Plans
plans,
have to show it.
The plans show a slight little bit at the turnaround and in the grading. I can modify that, and I will modify that prior to you issuing the order. You know, vote on it, and I'll make that change.
Anybody, that sounds like we should have a motion from the board.
there's a few other things. The signage for, especially for the Alfred Trail parking, Dude has something saying, signs at the parking lot, signs over at the trailhead, but I imagine there might need to be a little bit of wayfinding to get from the parking lot over to the trailhead.
A little
For Alfred
wayfinding? I'm sorry?
To get from the Alfred Trail parking spot
Yeah,
to the trailhead, you gotta walk down,
Alfred Trail and then take a right, yep, a left.
what's the main road? Dennis, you gotta walk down Dennis and turn onto Alfred.
2 feet on Dennis, but yes, and you turn onto Alfred and you get there. So we can have a map and signs for trail and trail, Alfred Trail and Alfred Trail. I know that the proponents wish to have a sign at both parking lots that have a little bit of a history explanation as per the property and the names and the significance. So we could easily add a trail map to that.
Yeah.
Would there be a kiosk there or something?
Excuse me? I'm sorry, Jim, I didn't hear you.
I said, would there be a kiosk or is that not a?
I don't know if it needs to be a full kiosk. Is more of like a plaque type thing with information.
So just to go back, Amy, are you asking for additional signs like cross points or something?
It was a discussion. It wasn't clear to me when you get out of your car on
Alfred.
if it's obvious where you're supposed to go.
Okay.
Like, a trail sign, just something fairly straightforward, yeah. Or
Right. I think if there's something that, I'm not sure if you just set it aside in a budget, Bruce, or something that additional sign, or in the order of conditions that additional signage may need approval, or like to be able to facilitate
yeah,
that.
I think the way it was written was the signage would, I think it needs to be somewhere in the conditions about when the signage gets approved.
Okay.
Sounds fine.
Certificate of compliance, but
Right.
I got an off the wall question. I was wondering whether it would pay to get the fire department like they did up in Oak Hill that posted it with their numbers and stuff. So if you had an emergency, they knew where to go when somebody called in an emergency situation on these trails or something. I was wondering if that's something that should be worked into the try and get the fire department involved.
And that can be part of the order of conditions, that additional signage may be needed, and that it's understood that the developer agrees to this. So.
Agreed.
Okay.
and then backing up a little bit, we had discussed out in the field about the separate CR plans, which was on an aerial photograph, I think, and would be referred to in the order conditions, presumably, that a certain length of John's Way and the entirety of Nellie's Way would be constructed by the applicant, which would include 2 crossings. And I don't know if the commission wants to have at least a general idea what those crossings are going to look like before approving them, because that is part of this package. And I believe Bruce was willing to show the rest of the trail and the 3rd crossing, which would be on the town and SVT. So it's basically pre-approved. They would get its permits now rather than have to redo it later.
I agree. I would like to have it at least on the map in terms of a vicinity.
Yep.
And I don't think it needs to be on the subdivision plans. It can be on that aerial photograph. It can be.
Right. Just marked.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's going to be a fairly non-invasive crossing like we do on a lot of the trails.
Yeah.
Okay. You could actually start to term that as non-invasive, so it's not like a dig crossing.
Right.
So it's raised. So
Definitely raised.
Yeah, you may want to add that, Amy. So raised crossing, not dug.
Say minimal digging, because you might need to put in a little bit of a footing or something like that.
Yep.
Correct.
But it'll probably be by hand, so.
Things on the list?
I had a bunch of those comments on the wetland mitigation sheet. Letting the commission know at least 2 weeks before you start who the monitor is going to be.
Fine.
They'll assume it's going to be Oxbow, but we need to approve it, not just be told.
Do you want to also add, Amy, that there's a pre-visit walk with
That's
you?
that's one of the standard conditions, so yeah.
Okay.
But probably a separate mitigation walk.
That's what I was thinking, and that's just for that task of the crossing.
I don't have it in front of me, but in the
2.2 part 2 203A, and the answer is no.
yeah, so you might want to just adjust that language.
Yes, I agree.
One that says air.
No, that's the next one.
I think we can all agree we know what that's supposed to mean.
Yeah.
And do you know, it's going to be within 12 inches of groundwater. Has there been any confirmation of where groundwater is?
There has in a number of areas in those exact points. We'll have Oxbow or whomever auger to confirm.
Yeah. I didn't see a seed mix. Was there going to be one?
We most always have a seed mix that supplements in around the plantings in the replication areas, and it's usually we use one or two, either New England wetland mix, or the company, it slips my name right now, out of Pennsylvania, that does a really good one. That what's that? Ernst, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, so I would prefer to see those on the plan sheet somewhere.
All right, I'll add that to that same sheet.
It's all in one place. And Oxbow, I'm sure you'll have some fallen trees you can throw in there.
Most definitely, we usually do.
So Oxbow, I'm sure, has some kind of boilerplate they can just throw in there, like 1 or 2 per mitigation site. Just.
Yeah, I usually they use them from the site and we add them in. But if you want me to have them labeled 1 or 2 on there, we can do that.
I think it should be labeled so we don't have a big argument with the contractors. Like, oh my God.
Not a problem.
And I think those are all most of the things on the plans.
Amy, are we going to talk about the public comments that came in that you sent around?
By all means.
Can I add a couple things for the plans?
Yeah.
First, I think we mentioned it, but I just wanted to confirm again the 50-foot. Like, make sure everything's out. You said there's no intent to be in it.
Yep.
Make sure the plan doesn't show, and please look at the drainage so that I'm really concerned about the road salt. I just briefly looked up what constituents are in a typical brine for road salt, and it's magnesium chloride, so magnesium is, it can be toxic. It can be an issue in groundwater, as well as magnesium acetate and potassium acetate. And so potassium can contribute to eutrophication. So I think, I did a brief look at, Mass DOT. I don't know if that's exactly what Littleton's using, but the fact that they're using a brine doesn't make me more comfortable that we don't have a water quality issue if we're really funneling a lot of our road drainage into these replication areas, and just concerns about the success of the replication areas. So I'd really like you to look into that for alternatives, or, potentially not funneling as much water in, I have some real concerns about success for those if they're going to take essentially all the road drainage.
If we say no salt, maybe we could just add more frequent maintenance to the basins to take out any.
You can't say no salt, really, because you get just a sheer sheet of ice, which we do get.
You can say no salt. A lot of communities say no salt around wetlands.
Oh, look at Lincoln. Yeah, I mean, you certainly can, and there's other products, or you have to expand your testing to make sure that the wetlands is success. You know that there's success. So
That was what I was going to ask, Sarah. Is there any way that we can?
oh, you can monitor it. You know, Kyle, you can put in whatever you deem is appropriate. It could be.
Yeah, I get that. Obviously, they have the years afterwards to make sure that the wetland is thriving.
You could actually do
something that we could add some sort of groundwater testing to show that either the chlorides aren't getting to the groundwater, or
Yep.
you know, make a before and 3-year period. Here's what it was before, and here's 3 years after 2 or 3 winters worth. This is what the groundwater looks like.
But then what? Then what? It's already
That's actually fair.
it's already contaminated, and then what?
Well, you could hold that, Julie, to the last signing off. So you wouldn't sign off on whether it's the last house or the last few houses until that has happened. So they have to prove, you have to prove success of that soil.
And in some instances, the soil, if it's negatively charged, you know, the salt is positively charged, and so the soils will have some capacity to absorb some of the ions. And so I don't know what the time frame would be. So I'm a little hesitant, if we're only looking a couple of years down the road, I'm a little hesitant to, you know, I don't know if 3 years is enough. Perhaps it is, perhaps 1 year is enough, but I have no idea. So I don't know I don't know what stick we would have at that point. So I'd really like to look at avenues just to keep the salt out of the wetlands, particularly the replication in the wetlands in the first place, if we can. I feel as though that's fair to do. I feel that's a fair ask. And, you know, we had the train station parking lot, you know, they went back and came up with some, you know, some mitigation measures and good options with, you know, buffers and that type of thing. So
Is it my understanding that conservation cannot ask for bonds? I know it can be done a long time ago, but I don't know if you can ever hold back a certain amount of funding to help support if there has to be additional replication. I don't recall. It was done a long time ago. I don't know if you can still do it.
Well, the replication itself has got a 3-year, you know, several year to get a sign off on. And the association will be responsible for seeing that through if the association is taken over at that point, although it may still be the developer. So one or the other is going to be responsible for it.
Just move that from 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
Association. So you could, Kyle, that might be something that would help.
I mean, but that's still, like Julie mentioned, that's great. But what if at 5 years we're seeing a problem? Then what?
Well, no, then that's not, and then that's the association's, you just set that out, that's their, they would have to figure that out.
But isn't the town going to be taking over Dennis?
Town takes over the road, but not the basins.
Right.
I'm told.
Right.
So the association.
The trail will be privately plowed, but.
No, but the basins themselves are on property that I'm told the association takes over, the town doesn't. Town takes the road, but not the off-road drainage.
So I think that does enhance a few more years, perhaps 3, moving out to 5, Julie. Not that it's ideal, but I agree to ask for further research or input into that on Bruce's part.
And would you want to see a draft of the homeowners association, which you certainly did for Durkee?
I'm assuming that's already done, correct?
I don't know. That's in the legal part, but we have prepared and have 2 different operation and maintenance packages that are put together. One that addresses the whole property, and one that just addresses the shared drive.
Why wouldn't some of this just be in perpetuity? That they're responsible for, period.
Oh, they are, totally.
But yes, Amy, I do agree that, especially whatever agreement has the basins in them.
I mean, Kay and Durkee were a little bit different because they had all the signs and all the open space and wildlife corridors, so it was a little different, but Still might want to take a look at it.
So it sounds like we have a few things still on the list to be brought forward. Are there any other items that we haven't spoken of since the original start of this meeting?
The only other two I wanted to throw on there is to have an idea of when the bounds would be put in for the CRs and when the property transfers. Get those out.
Yeah,
What kind of bounds?
The property bounds, especially between the CR and the privately held areas. So that we got these, especially the beginning of Alfred Trail is a little bit narrow, and the trail's gonna be close to the property line.
Well, what I was getting at was they going to be a granite bound or a cement bound, or are they going to be a piece of rebar driven in the ground? That's what I was kind of getting at.
Not going to be rebar. That should already be in a draft somewhere. No, okay. So I guess I would make an assumption that they're already going to be in prior to the transfer. And I don't think that the trails are going to be able to be open to the public until everything has been transferred.
Right, and until there was some discussion of the trails, namely the John's Way not being open for a certain amount of time so that the road work got in and they weren't people in and around with machinery and such.
Right.
I wouldn't think any of it should be open until you get beyond the construction period.
I would agree.
But I think the bounds are something to discuss with SVT too.
Yeah. What we've been using for bounds lately on a couple of these are what's called a Bernstein Bound. It looks like a granite or a concrete bound on the surface, but it's actually a block of plastic or rubber, I'm not sure which, and it's hollow in the center, and it has a center point that's driven, and then a hook that goes through, and it splays out, and it hooks out in 3 different areas, so you can't lift the thing out of the ground, you can't remove it, and it's a whole lot easier to get them out into the woods in the middle of Timbuktu to put them into place.
How high are they above ground?
3 to 4 inches.
It-
Just the standard bound height, the same you put a bound. The plus thing is that they've got steel within them so that you can find them with a magnetic detector as well.
I feel like we usually ask people, even if it's a simple library kiosk, to use natural materials. I would prefer natural, not to have plastic that's going to eventually degrade out into the woods into little plastic pieces.
This is not going to do that. This is a proven technology. I can send you all the literature on it. They're being used by the state. They're being used everywhere as bounds.
I'm sure they are. I would still prefer natural materials that will, be in the woods and, not degrade into plastic pieces or leach, plastic.
That's going to mean concrete or granite.
Concrete's not natural. It degrades faster than these things.
Yeah, granite or wood with
Not
cap.
wood.
Not wood.
Not wood.
Oh.
And I don't want to drill mark. I don't want to drill mark in a rock.
Old school.
I've had that.
So, Bruce,
Sometimes that has to happen, James.
yeah, Bruce, if you could send that the Bernstein Bound,
Certainly.
I'd like to at least read it. So,
No problem.
maybe what else is on the list?
I think that was what I had tonight. And as Anna said, you might have some public comment and some other comment letters.
Yeah, I have the one from Brian and Marie Beam, and they say that in order to construct 14 houses in the density yield plan, you would have repeated violation of the 50-foot buffer on lots 7, 9, 10, 11, 13, and 14. And it also says that the plan, and it's not necessarily in our purview, but has insufficient perk testing. So anyway,
Are
that's,
those comments that were brought up to the planning board as well?
Yes.
Okay.
So on the perk test, I've done testing on every single lot out here of at least the deep hole test. Not always. I don't have perk on a couple of them, but I took soil samples, and both the Board of Health agent and I agreed to the types of soils, and I designed on the most conservative system that's allowed within that perk rate, even though we have much faster perk rates on the adjacent lots, just to show that the system would fit. Further, I've done what the open space requirement calls for under the Littleton regulations, and that's provide an affidavit from a soil evaluator, which I am, that the systems can be designed in accordance with Title V on each of the lots. Further, Title V, the state environmental control law, states and makes reference to when you have a cluster bylaw that you're fully allowed and they're encourage a common treatment system. And we have that in place, and this is a cluster bylaw. And the last thing is that on their letter, they list slots 7, 9, 10, 11, 13, and 14 cannot be developed without invasion into the 50-foot buffer zone. And 7, 9, 10, and 14, I will agree that there is a slight intrusion of the driveway into the 50-foot buffer zone. But 11 and 13 are entirely out of the 50-foot buffer zone in all proposed activities.
If you got something going to the drive, by how much? A foot, 2 feet, 5 feet, 10 feet?
I can show you. I'll bring it right up.
I thought you were removing everything from the 50.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
what I
you-
was.
I removed any crossings. Do I have to unshare and share, or do you see this plan?
We can't see it.
Okay, hang on a minute. Share screen 2.
Can I just mention my point in bringing this up, because I know it's rehashing?
All right, so you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, so this is lot 13. This is lot 14. The driveway to get to 14 is being held right at the corner of this adjacent property, and it just nicks into the 50-foot buffer zone. Lot 7 is here in the center, and it comes in the way that Alfred Trail would, where it just nicks the two zones right here on either side of the driveway. And lot 9 and 10 are these two. And again, this just nicks between the 50-foot zone for over here and the 50-foot zone for over here, coming right in the middle. And those are the 3 places where driveway would nick the 50-foot zones.
And what do you mean by nick?
Right.
This is a 1 inch equals 85 scale. So from here to here is 50 feet. So the driveway is, edge of the driveway is right on the edge of the 50-foot zone here. And I'd say it looks like it's about 2 or 3 feet into it on that side. So 5 or 6 feet for the length of 15 feet, 20 feet. Same thing over here, although this section would be in it for 20 feet. And this one over here, probably in it for 35 feet for the width of the driveway, 10 or 12 feet wide.
So does that mean you got to file waivers on every single one of those?
If we were to build the conventional open space, I would have to file waivers on those. That is correct. Just like I would have to file a notice of intent for a house in the outer buffer, for drainage over here, for drainage over here, for, you know, I would have to file a notice of intent if I was going to build that plan for the various different things. But I'm not building that plan. That's a yield, density yield plan, and there's no intent to build it.
So I think just to make sure there's no confusion that the plan, so what I'm hearing is that what you're submitting to us, there are no other areas that nick and are in the 50. This is looking, if you were to do the conventional plan.
100% correct.
I think that part, that definitely needed to be reiterated.
100%.
I would agree, yeah.
It looks like Mr. Beam might have wanted to clarify a thought. Is that?
I did. Can I?
Is that appropriate? I'm not the chair, so I can't. It has the chair needs to do it. I just wanted to not lose track of that. That's all.
Thank you.
Like to speak? Go ahead.
Yeah, the reason we brought this up is because at the last meeting, the applicant threatened the commission with returning to this plan if they did their wetland crossing, right? So we thought it might be good for this commission to see what plan the applicant had in mind if they didn't get the crossing, right? So I just thought you might want to see that and see that it's truly not realistic to build that plan. And the applicant just admitted he's not going to build that plan. So I'm concerned here that we're moving toward an approval of the crossing, and I just wanted to make sure that you had all the information. The other thing in my letter that I think is really important is the precedent that would be set with the crossing, because there are literally hundreds of privately owned acres in this vicinity, including the Peak property, which abuts this, the Glavy property. And to me, approving a waiver like this opens the door for all of that property to be developed in the same manner. And do we really want to open that door? So I'd ask the commission to really think about that as even maybe more important than just this approval.
I would agree. That's my concern as well, and that there's been no alternative analysis with the current proposed plan.
Right.
That there's no alternative analysis showing that just not building those 2 extra houses, without that, is there maybe a possibility of you mentioned 1 other house instead of the 2? If you eliminate the crossing, there could be just maybe 1 house instead. There's been no investigation of alternative measures without these 2 houses. Oh, there's another plan where you went around the wetland, but still trying to get those 2 houses in, but no alternatives that do not include these 2 houses that require a crossing. And so why are they, and you mentioned in the last meeting, the only reason you are building these 2 houses is for economic viability, but you have never shown that economic viability. So I just don't see why a waiver would be even possible if you have not shown that these are required.
Okay. I went through all of this in great detail. I summarized it at the beginning of this meeting. I have the filings with the commission in September, and November, and an economic development that was done by the builder, by the property owner for this. The issue here is, as was stated with the planning board, and it's not a threat. It is if we don't have the 16 lots in the open space, the developer, the proponent is not planning to do the open space development. They would go back to a conventional development. We'd file notices of intent for that which would be on the other plan, and it would be 14 lots, which the entire property, including the house, which the entire property would be divided up amongst those without the access to the back or the connection between the Town Conservation Trust and the town land. And it's not a threat. It's what I've been told that the owners would do with the property.
But I guess Brian Beam was pointing out that even that other way of building also goes through the 50.
That's correct. It does.
Right.
As
Okay.
I just showed you, there are 3 spots that it goes in through, tiny little pieces of the 50. It does have it has no wetland crossings, but it does go through the 50-foot buffer in 3 locations.
Okay. I think that we certainly have taken a lot of time tonight to kind of start to really dial in on a lot of this data and what you've provided, Bruce. I think Amy has hopefully categorized this list of what we would like for the next meeting, which is August 10th, maybe?
That's what's on my calendar.
August 10th.
Yes.
I think we've had a good amount of dialogue tonight, so I would encourage to keep going and look at this. Anybody?
Central?
Well, does the commission need anything particular in returns to, with regards to the waiver piece of it?
I think a big piece of analysis is the potential for permanent impacts to the wetland from the chloride and the success of the replication areas. I have very serious concerns about those things, and you know that's part of the my analysis. You know, for the waiver.
Yep. I feel like it should be better, not worse, for the waiver. So, okay.
Well, and so to point out too, by definition, you can't make the stormwater on the site better. It's undeveloped, so you can't make the stormwater on the site better. You know,
That's a good point. Okay. All right. Does anybody have anything else you want to add to this or conversation tonight? Okay. Do we have a motion to close the meeting?
Continue, please.
Continue.
Oh, thought we already continued to August 10th. Would you like to continue, Bruce, to August 10th?
Yes, to a time, please.
No idea.
No idea.
Amy will let you know.
After 7:30. I think there might be 2 things in front of you.
Right. It'll be early, maybe.
Please.
Okay. Moving on. Do we have a motion?
There are a couple other things.
You do?
Well, okay, so, yeah, the enforcement order 54 Bruce Street.
You're done with me though, right?
Yep, you're done.
Okay, thank you guys. Have a good night.
Yep.
Chuck Karen wasn't the memo, but he had a family emergency and got called away, so that's back on hold again. Oh, the workers' credit union signs?
Right, the one that you sent around. I thought that looked good.
It seemed to have the idea.
a little awkward, but it's fine.
The wording was a little
Gets
awkward.
the point across.
Do this.
Gets the point across, but it's awkward. Yeah.
I think it'll be fine.
And I talked to Mass DOT. They are hiring BSC to do a nose of intent for that air road repair stuff.
Good.
So they'll be filing on that.
Good.
Okay, so they're not coming in prior, they're just going to file something.
They're just going to go right for the nose of intent, yeah.
Workers next door is getting very purple.
Yeah.
Very, very purple.
Yep.
Sorry, what do you mean by purple?
The loose strife is in full bloom.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, lots of it.
We're getting it around the lake too. I've been noticing it.
Yeah, there's a lot in the marsh at the other end of the lake.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
At 9:28, Andrew, I second that.
We need a roll call vote.
We do.
Do Kyle,
Kyle Maxfield, yes.
Ryan Crowley, yes.
Sarah Seward, yes. Julie,
Julie Rupp, yes.
Andrew?
Andrew Smarco, yes.
James?
James Pickett, yes.
All right, everyone remain hydrated.
Thanks, Mom.
We'll see you in a few weeks.
Bye.
Have a good night, everyone.